I'm pleased to present now today's webinar, Family Matters, Local Strategies for Integrating Immigrant and Refugee Families. Immigration is a family affair. National policy may define your status, but the experience of arrival and integration, especially for families, is felt locally. Successful integration means navigating the complexity of new cultural, social, educational, and economic systems for the whole family, including the young and the old. So what works? How can city and community stakeholders ensure a promising future for every member of the newcomer family? To help us answer these important questions, I am delighted to welcome today's guests, who join us virtually from Barcelona and have here in the office with me in Toronto, joining us to share good practices that are putting families first and welcoming refugee and reunified immigrant families based on the first principles of living together, building relationships, support, trust, and a community of welcome. Joining us from the beautiful Catalan city of Barcelona, Spain, we have Ramon Senora, Director of Migrants Attention and Welcoming Policies with the Municipality of Barcelona. And here in Toronto, Canada, we are delighted to have Tamara Sabarini, Project Coordinator for Ryerson University's Lifeline Syria Challenge. So let's get started. From Barcelona, let me introduce our first speaker, Ramon Senora. Ramon's history with the city is long and impressive, going back to the development of the city's first local immigration plan, starting in 2005, and with it the seeds of today's New Families Reunification program. Since 2015, Ramon has been Director of Migrants Attention and Welcoming Policies for the municipality, where he also oversees the Nausicaa program for asylum seekers to the city. As former Director of Social Innovation for the municipality, Ramon was responsible for implementing the Zencles project, which was winner of the 2014 Mayor's Challenge by Bloomberg Philanthropies. As former Director of Immigration and Interculturality, Ramon was also responsible for the development of Barcelona's seminal Interculturality plan and was in charge of implementing Barcelona's famous anti-rumor strategy, which we have featured prominently here at Cities of Migration and has been replicated across Spain, Europe, and recently in Toronto. Ramon is also a member and former chairman of the Migration Working Group of the Pan-European Network Eurocities. We are delighted to have you with us here today, Ramon. The podium is yours.
Hello, everybody. Good morning and good evening, good afternoon. Thank you, Cities of Migration, for having the opportunity to share with all the audience our, I hope, interesting program on family regrouping, new families in the city of Barcelona. First of all, I will start with a very brief presentation of our city. It's a 1.6 million inhabitant city with approximately 16% of population with a nationality different from the Spanish nationality. We had, during 2000 and 2010, a very rapid growth of the migrant population. And since the crisis, more or less, the migrant population and foreign population has been stable. Nevertheless, if we count people who has been born abroad, we are talking about 22% of inhabitants born abroad. And if we add people and children born already in Barcelona from mixed marriages and from migrants, we're talking about approximately 1/3 of the population with roots abroad. Very quickly, we are a country more focused on immigration rather than refugee, although refugee issues are being increasingly important in the city of Barcelona. But historically, we are more migrant city than a refugee city. If we see very quickly the origin of our residents, we see that we have quite a variety of origins, especially from the rest of Europe, from Asia. We are the main gate of Asian migrants in south of Europe, from Pakistan, from Philippines, from India, etc., but as well historically from Latin America, where there's a lot of residents where the origin is the Latin American countries. I will start already with our description, a quick description of our program, which is called New Families. Who are we targeting in this program? We're targeting families who want to initiate a family regrouping process. Okay, it's a family, it's very important for the municipality, and the municipality wants to support and strengthen family because this is something that is already in the Universal Declarations of Human Rights, Article 16, stands there that men and women of full age without any limitations due to race, nationality, or religion, where family is a natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. That's what we want to do, to protect families and to foster something that it seems very natural, is that everybody should have the right to live with the loved ones, with their spouses, husbands, and children all together and not being separated for many kilometers. Which are the specific objectives of our project? We want to reinforce family reunifications by providing a special assistance to all families, and this is very important. It's not a group of families, it's all families that start a reunification process in the city of Barcelona. We want also to provide migrants with a better initial information on their host society, and we want to offer specific services for some different groups involved in the reunification process, this is children, women, etc. We also want to provide psychological support and group support during the difficult process of reunification, and especially focus and reinforce the role of women being in the process of family reunification, taking into account all the risk of gender inequality. And finally, there's also an important objective, which is to help mainstream services to cope with the impact of new arrivals to their services, and this is especially important for the educational system. Why we considering investing in family regrouping, or why we want to focus on family regrouping? Because family regrouping is a turning point of migrants' journey. Migrants who regroup have reached some economic stability in our society. They decide to settle in our country, in our city, and to bring the loved ones, mainly children, spouses, and husbands. This is a moment of change regarding to the whole society. Migrants who want to regroup, they're being more interested on the educational system, the facility for youngsters, etc. This is an important moment for welcome policies because migrants are becoming more receptive. Migrants become receptive to language learning, for example. They would like to help their children with homework when they arrive. Participation, of course, to this program is on a voluntary basis. However, we encourage everybody to participate. And once the family is arrived in the city of Barcelona, migrants plan their future in the hosting society rather than in the past society of the country of origin. Once they regroup their family members, we have seen that remittances to the country of origin decrease. Finally, we consider that family reunification, because of our experience, tells us, is a very delicate moment for families after years of separations. Hopes and expectations can turn into problems and difficulties and become within the families. We can do a preventive work to support group with peer groups and with professional psychological supervision this delicate moment. How do we do it? How do we do it? We have families from outside of the European Union, when they want to initiate or start a family regrouping process in Spain, they have to ask for a report on the housing where they live. And this report it's submitted to the city, to the municipality, who has the competence to make an inspection of the house to see the conditions of the house. Therefore, we are the information of all families who would like to initiate one of these processes. This is how we get all the information from all the families. Okay. After reviewing the list of persons of every district that wants to initiate this process, we call one per one these families and we invite them to come to the city to a meeting. And this is how we do it. And approximately 50-60% of all families who start a family reunification program in our city end up participating in the program. It's very important that we focus in two different moments of the process. The first is before the arrival. Therefore, we work with the people who is already in our city. The families, members who are in our city, who have been in our city for maybe a long time, and once they settle and once they are in a good condition, economic condition, housing condition, they decide to bring their relatives. Then, after this moment, we focus on the with the group of family members who will arrive or who arrive by family regrouping. So there's two different moments, before the arrival and after the arrival. After 10 years, the program is consolidated and many families already request by themselves the services of the program. Before the regrouping, as I told before, there's this previous welcome. There's an initial monitoring. We invite everybody to come to this initial monitoring, and there we provide legal assessment, especially to finalize the legal process, which is very complicated. In that moment, migrants are very worried on all the red tape and legal process about how they could bring their relatives to Barcelona. And they are not so focused on social issues and what would happen to them and to their family once their family members arrive to the city. Nevertheless, here we start to work with some mothers and fathers who show some special interest to share their worries and their situations with other people who is also undertaking the same process. This is what we do before the arrival. Also, before the arrival, we identify especially women who will want to bring their husbands by family reunification. We target especially this woman. They will face an important challenge. So thought this woman will, at the initial state, will bring the income to their household, and the regrouped husband will be dependent on her. This can be an important challenge for some families, and especially for the women who will bring their husband, also for their husband. So this is something that can we work and can we prepare. Sometimes there's problems arise because of these issues. After family members have arrived, we also are targeting special groups, especially in the case of regrouped women. The challenge of the program is to reach them, avoiding their isolation. This is the case of many of them, and convince their husbands to allow them to participate in what we call women's workshop. The aim of this workshop, which are excuses, for example, learning the language or cooking or whatever, it's to work basic information, provide confidence, and gain autonomy in order to normally live in Barcelona. You have to understand we have many people coming from very agricultural areas and patriarchal areas of Pakistan. Some of them, many of them are illiterated, so it is very important to focus on these really, really vulnerable regrouped women. Another special group or action that we have is we are focused specifically on supporting youngsters, and when they arrive here, especially those who are adolescents, those who are less than 10 years, there's no big problems. They go to school and they integrate easily. But those who are adolescents between 10, 12 until 16, 18, it's quite more complicated because there's a lot of issues here. The migration process also, it's together with adolescence process, and this can generate also information. Here we have different services. First one is the education and orientation services. A team of education and psychologists work in the program to monitor young new arrivals individually to ensure that they are integrated in their new educational environment. We have a Get Ready, which is a group of people. It's a program for targeting youngsters between 16 and 19 who with good academic record, but who would like to apply for higher education. We prepare them to allow them to go to higher education. And then we have these meeting points, which is in Saturdays. We invite these Saturdays all along the year to youngsters to meet on Saturdays, just to break the ice during 6-7 Saturdays and to share their feelings about their new country of residence and new city of residence. And finally, during the summer, which is a time where very often migrants they take the opportunity to bring children. There's many regrouping processes in May and June, which is not very good time because school will not start until September. Therefore, these youngsters, they arrive and they, until we start this program, most of them, they stay at home doing 2 months, 3 months, just doing nothing and worrying a lot. So what we did is a program for during July and August, which the main goal is to create a serial of education and leisure activities aimed at familiarizing in a positive way with the city of Barcelona and adapting to it during the summer period between July and the end of August. And this has been proved a very, very positive program because really fosters confidence of these youngsters. So when they go to school in September, they are much better prepared than if they wouldn't arrive there. Finally, what type of individual guidance and mentoring we have provide? Well, each family receives this specific attention about their needs and demands, and each family receives guidance sessions about how the needs can and to deal with the new family relationships. So what type of information we provide? Free time, healthcare, especially education, formal education, housing, labor market, psychological support too, which is also important. We have a group of psychologists working in our team. Okay, and I have to say that I'm really, really very proud of the team that is working in this program. It's a team of 17 professionals with very different skills: psychologists, cultural mediators, translators, lawyers, gender specialists. And these people are not working only on the central office, but also in the territories, in the different districts of the city. And during the summer, there's additional 16 youngster instructors who also join our team. Our budget for 2017, adding all the different projects and sub-projects, it's 212,000 euros. And some key aspects that we consider here is like, for example, working with mainstream services of the city, education, libraries, leisure for youngsters, women's department is really key. What we do is it's a bridge. We bridge these people to the normal, regularized services for any citizen. Also sometimes there's a need for tailor-made solutions for specific communities, especially for those coming from Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. We have learned especially how to reach these communities and to gain confidence. And also, this special attention to gender issues, which with this strategy to reach isolated women once they get regrouped. Finally, just to give you a little bit the idea of the importance and the number, we have chosen some numbers. We have reached in the last 6 years 9,879 families, most of them from Latin America and India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. And we have detected 7,282 new arrivals that we would be able to monitor. 58% women, and 21% from Pakistan. Finally, if anyone is more interested in any more information, we have some links here and some videos which are also translated they have subtitles in 8 different languages that explain each of all these different groups and strategies and spaces that we have created for women, for parents, for youngsters, and for the summer program. And I will finish here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ramon. That was excellent. And thank you for showing us, helping us understand why family reunification has to be a local priority. As you said, this family regrouping marks a real turning point for migrants. It's when they really go from being a migrant to an immigrant. It's a really interesting and a very important point at that moment when they decide to bring their families, that they are investing in settling in their new cities. So it really creates a win-win solution when our cities want to invest back with them. So thank you very much. We should all aspire to Barcelona's efforts to build and create a welcoming city
Thank you.
for all newcomers across all generations. That's wonderful. And here in Canada, cities like Toronto are also welcoming hundreds of refugee families through citizen-led responses to Canada's national refugee sponsorship program. It's sort of a different paradigm, but very similar in its components. And so we're really interested in understanding more about how Toronto's private citizens are responding to new refugee families. And to help us understand, and explore that, let me introduce our next speaker, who is Tamara Sabarini, who we're delighted to have with us today. Tamara is the project coordinator of the Ryerson University Lifeline Syria Challenge. In her role, she supports Ryerson Lifeline Syria's sponsorship groups through the private refugee sponsorship process and manages student experiential learning opportunities within that program. Tamara has a background in the immigration and not-for-profit sector, working at settlement organizations like COSTI Immigrant Services, as well as at organizations like the Toronto Palestine Film Festival. Tamara graduated from Ryerson University with a Master's of Arts in Immigration and Settlement Studies, where her research explored the formation of refugee identity within the context of refugee camps. So we're delighted to have Tamara with us. Welcome, Tamara. The podium is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Kim, and thank you to Cities of Migration for inviting me here today. It's really exciting to see all of the interest in our initiative from across the globe. So thank you to everyone listening as well. So I want to start things off by saying that our program, the Ryerson University Lifeline Syria Challenge, which I'll refer to as the RULSC, is quite a unique initiative that's really demonstrated the capacity of universities to help solve real-world problems by engaging our local community. We've unleashed the interests, energy, and talents of our student community to tackle a global crisis at the local level. So I'm really looking forward to sharing more about our program today. For those of you unfamiliar with the private sponsorship of refugees program in Canada, I wanted to start things off by providing some context. So, Canada's current private sponsorship of refugees program, which is the only private sponsorship program in the world, was created in response to the Indo-Chinese refugee crisis in 1979. Since then, the program has expanded, allowing Canadians to offer protection to more than 230,000 refugees over the years. Privately sponsored refugees, or PSRs as we call them, are resettled refugees who are identified by the Canadian government or by sponsors, screened, processed, and approved overseas, and arrive to Canada as permanent residents. So in the U.S. context, they would be green card holders upon arrival. Refugees in the PSR category receive financial support and settlement assistance from private sponsors for a year after their arrival to Canada. And private sponsors are generally groups of Canadians, like groups of families and friends and faith-based communities and ethnocultural groups and so on. So I just want to touch briefly on the other categories of refugees that we have in Canada. Government-assisted refugees are referred to Canada by the UNHCR. They're also processed and screened abroad, but they're supported financially for 12 months by the Government of Canada. So this category of refugees receive settlement support from an NGO funded by the Canadian government rather than from private sponsors. So that's the main difference really between the government category and the private category. The chart here illustrates the number of government-assisted and privately sponsored refugees since 1979 to 2015. The numbers for 2016, which we'll take a look at, are significant compared to the more recent years. And briefly, we do have refugee claimants in Canada as well. So these are asylum seekers who make a claim for refugee protection from inside Canada. These numbers are significantly lower than the government-assisted and privately sponsored categories. And the numbers are much lower in Canada than, of course, in the European context where they're mostly asylum seekers. So in November of 2015, the Canadian government under Justin Trudeau announced their plan to resettle 25,000 Syrian refugees in Canada by the end of 2016. This number included both government-assisted and privately sponsored refugees. And since then, we've welcomed over 40,000 Syrian refugees. RULSC works mostly to support private sponsors, so I'll focus mostly on the key figures related to PSRs. So approximately 14,274 Syrian PSRs have arrived between November 2015 and January 2017, and of course this number has continued to increase since then. In the Greater Toronto Area, we've welcomed approximately 4,380 Syrian PSRs to date, and 292 Syrian individuals sponsored through our program have arrived since the program began. So the RULSC was inspired by the citizen-led group in Toronto called Lifeline Syria, which has a goal to galvanize and assist private citizens and organizations in the Greater Toronto Area to sponsor Syrian refugees and resettle them over 2 years. So a few of the board members from Lifeline Syria, including the founder of RULSC, Wendy Sukier, suggested that the Ryerson community get involved with this initiative. And so as a result, the RULSC was initially established in July 2015 to mobilize the Ryerson community to form, at the time, groups to sponsor 10 Syrian refugee families. The leadership at Ryerson really immediately viewed this as an opportunity to represent Ryerson's core values of community building and social justice and inclusion, and also saw this as an incredible opportunity for students to put their knowledge and their knowledge into action and work together to solve real-world problems. Other universities in Toronto, I think feeling the same sense of obligation, began to show interest in a collaboration with Ryerson and viewing the RULSC as an additional opportunity to promote engagement in refugee education and advocacy at a time of increasing public interest. This really allowed Ryerson to partner with the 3 other Toronto universities, OCAD University, University of Toronto, and York University, to really widen the scope of the project. So this pan-university collaboration allowed RULSC to create 90 sponsorship teams, and those teams are made up of university students, staff, faculty, and community members who committed to sponsoring more than 120 Syrian refugee families, or a total of 434 individuals. I wanted to mention briefly that those who are sponsored as single individuals, because there are groups that have been sponsored or that have sponsored one person only, are being reunited with their families here. So family reunification plays a big role in the work that we do, and as Ramon sort of touched on, a lot of families don't really start their resettlement process until they're reunified with their family here. So it really is the #1 concern for a lot of people that are arriving. The sponsors and students across the universities have also fundraised over $5 million to support these 120 Syrian refugee families. So what is it that this program actually does? Well, we help teams navigate the paperwork to get matched to a refugee case. We created an online platform to help sponsors easily fundraise. We centralize information related to sponsorship and resettlement. And we support groups through every stage of sponsorship, so prior to the family's arrival and for up to 1 year after they arrive. But really what's been critical to our work is the engagement of volunteers. We've had more than 1,000 volunteers actively supporting the RULSC. So I'll talk a little bit about the student involvement in our program. So as I've already sort of mentioned, students have played a large role in creating innovative approaches to refugee resettlement. So for example, student groups from across campus, sorry, I'm behind on my slides. Student groups from across campus, such as the Ryerson Student Union, the Muslim Students Association, and Enactus Ryerson, have helped organize fundraisers, clothing drives. They're hosting financial literacy workshops. They're really coming up with creative strategies to help make a direct impact on the lives of these families. So we also assign student volunteers to each of the RULSC sponsor groups to support with various tasks. So the students become part of the sponsorship group, and they support teams with preparing for the refugees' arrival and then assisting the families upon arrival. So prior to arrival, students might research settlement services available in particular neighborhoods, or for example, some of the students who are Syrian or from the Middle East have really provided cultural competence training to some of the sponsors. But then once the newcomers arrive, students can start to help the families adjust to life in Canada by helping them find appropriate services in their neighborhood. So for example, helping find childcare, ESL classes, community centers, helping families find affordable places to buy groceries, or referring them to local Middle Eastern grocers or halal butcher shops, and helping escort grandparents to medical appointments if other family members are unavailable. In some cases, students who studied accounting or finance might help parents set up a bank account that best suits the needs of their family. So children, youth, and adults in the family will really have different needs throughout the settlement process, and some volunteers will be assigned to help children with their homework, tutoring, and extracurriculars, while other volunteers will take on the employment portfolio, perhaps supporting adults or those of working age in the family to improve their English, search for work, and help them navigate Canadian life from that perspective. So every member of the family will really have different social and emotional needs as well. So we do our best to match student volunteers to families based on the needs of each family member, as well as the volunteer's own profile and experience. So we also created a number of student-led committees that focus on integrating different members of the family. So I'll just give a few examples. Our peer mentoring committee, which is aimed towards supporting Syrian newcomer youth and adults, specifically between the ages of 16 to 35, matches Ryerson students to Syrian newcomer youth to provide leadership and mentorship. So the pairs socialize, they practice English together, they explore the city. Mentors are really good at finding things to do on a student budget, which is handy. And mentors have helped Syrian newcomer youth apply for post-secondary education, finding out what courses they need for bridging programs. They've helped youth find part-time work at restaurants or retail jobs where students themselves might be working part-time while they're in school. So really finding commonalities and doing things together that they know people their age are interested in and want to do. We also created an ESL committee, so we've organized several ESL workshops where newcomers have the opportunity to sit down and get one-on-one support from English-speaking students. And we've modeled these so that some workshops are offered to Syrian refugee families, so the whole family unit's welcome. It's structured in a way that parents can come, practice English with their children in a family-friendly setting on weekends when kids don't have school, while their parents sort of receive more formal tutoring and ESL learning in a separate space. While the other ESL workshops have been sort of geared to adults. So they're offered on weeknights where we often find youth or teenagers in the family have attended and enjoy coming to campus on their own, maybe without their parents. They want to explore downtown or explore the campus. So we really tried to gear the various sessions towards people of different ages to ensure that we were reaching the needs of everyone. So parents, kids, teenagers, and even grandparents have attended our family workshops with their grandkids. So that's been really nice to see. Another group we have, for example, is the Early Childhood Education Committee. So these are early childhood education students who are offering babysitting services to newcomer parents, especially in the early days after their arrival. Parents are sort of busy with appointments at the bank and language assessments and medical appointments and anything you can imagine that you'd be doing when you're first moving to a new country. So this committee's been really helpful in allowing parents the opportunity to engage in learning opportunities or important settlement services without worrying about the child-minding aspect in the early days. We also noticed that children in the families often learn English more quickly than their parents. But we try to encourage sponsors not to use children as interpreters or translators, so we created the Arabic Interpretation and Translation Committee, and hundreds of Arabic-speaking students across the university signed up for this committee. And they've been accompanying families to doctor's appointments, doing emergency phone interpretation. This is a really important support group. We've relied on these students a lot for their help. So how do we determine what committees work and what don't? Really, it's been trial and error. So some committees have been more successful than others. For example, we tried to form a women's group to support moms in the family, just so they could have sort of a setting where they could get together and talk and socialize, but we found it was difficult to find a time that worked for all the women who were busy bringing their kids to and from school and sort of trying to study English full time, so that didn't really take off as we had envisioned. So we continue to evaluate and improve on the programs and student initiatives as we learn and as family needs change. So in terms of project impact, many of the families or individuals that we've sponsored through RULSC are being reunited with family that in some cases they haven't seen in 5, 10, or even 20 years. So family reunification is really at the core of Canadian immigration and nation building, and of course those joining family here have a significantly easier time with their settlement and integration. They can rely on their family for support, but at the same time they can engage with their sponsors and with our program for additional resources. So, in addition to the social and cultural benefits of family reunification, the RULSC provides families with increased social capital by widening their networks beyond co-ethnic and co-religious groups. And they've been introduced to their sponsors' social networks, which has been instrumental for finding employment or led to greater proficiency in English, and of course for forming new friendships and new relationships. We've sort of already touched on the various student experiential learning and applied research opportunities for students. In terms of social innovation, understanding that complex problems need complex solutions, Ryerson's taken an innovative approach to tackling the Syrian refugee crisis and really leveraged the existing infrastructure of post-secondary institutions to drive social innovation and interpret Canada's private sponsorship program in a new way that hasn't really been done in any Canadian university before. We've also built relationships across government and community organizations, and of course with other educational institutions. Some of the volunteers, for example, from our Interpretation Committee were called on by Toronto Pearson Airport to support with the influx of Syrian refugees at the airport to do interpretation. And so, the program's really been integrated into the local community, and the support's extended beyond just the framework of RULSC. And of course, we've engaged individual Canadians, giving them an opportunity to respond to a humanitarian crisis, and also an opportunity to connect with the world. So I'll wrap things up by sharing a few of our lessons learned. First, collaborate to innovate. So the universities banded together and received leadership and support at the executive level, and this was really instrumental in growing the program into a national project. I don't think we could have accomplished this on our own or without the support and energy from students. Secondly, assess and evaluate. As I sort of mentioned, we continuously assess the needs of families, the skills and ability of students, and the existing immigration and settlement services to determine what the gaps are, what we're doing that has worked, and what we need to improve on. So, I gave the example, we started off with certain committees that didn't work as well. We learned that we needed to give students more specific goals, identify where families needed more support. So it's really an ongoing process. And of course, managing expectations is a big one. We remind sponsors and students not to romanticize the sponsorship experience. Of course, there will be challenges, both for the groups and for the families. And while this program's been such a huge success in so many ways, it's also important to recognize that sponsors and student volunteers won't be able to solve all of the challenges facing newcomers. And finally, be flexible. Make it up as you go, whether it's been sudden changes to government policy. We've had rejected cases and delays. So we've really overcome unexpected challenges and frustrations and learned from our success and failure. And we created a lot of our processes and structures on the fly. So in some ways, this was challenging and required some extra work, but also enabled us to make adjustments to the program as needed. So I will conclude by saying that this university-led effort has been really both rewarding and incredibly illuminating about the possibility to do more with our program model. Universities can really play a major role in resettlement of refugees, and there is drive and interest and talent within the universities that can be leveraged for societal needs. We've seen a lot of interest in this project from the international community, and we've shared some insights with delegations from the U.S. and South America and Europe, so we're hopeful in the months ahead that we see this initiative being replicated.
Thank you, Tamara, and I'm sure you will, actually. It's a very excellent program. Thank you so much for sharing the success of Ryerson's Lifeline Syria Challenge, Canada's first university-led refugee sponsorship organization that truly engages multiple agents of inclusion, from the newcomer Syrian refugee family to students to private citizens. So bravo to you. And while the metrics on Syrian family arrivals and student engagement are impressive, I really believe, as I'm sure we all do, that the true impact of programs like these will be seen in the years to come. We're really making Toronto a city where refugee families are welcome today and tomorrow. So thank you so much. I hope our audiences have learned as much as I have from these great ideas. They're all ready to be replicated and adapted in a city near you. So do take note, get connected. We have now concluded the formal portion of our webinar. We're going to move to our Q&A, and so continue to submit questions to our Q&A box while I get things started with a few questions for today's speakers. I thought I'd start, Ramon, with you. I understand Barcelona is in the process of updating its seminal interculturality plan, which will be 10 years old next year. very impressive with its roots in what unites us, not what separates us. The plan signaled a bold new vision for the city based on coexistence in diversity, and uses positive interaction, contact dialogue, and mutual familiarity as its guiding principles. So I'm curious, can you tell us how has that intercultural framework, I'm asking you from a country that talks about multiculturalism, there is a bit of a debate on this issue, even here within Canada, but I'm interested in how that intercultural framework has contributed to the city's family reunification policy and programming.
Yes, the family reunification, the first, if we understand interculturality, we understand with basically three important pillars of interculturality: interaction, as you mentioned it, equality, and respect for diversity. This project, the News Family Projects, tackles especially the second principle, equality, gives access to newcomers who come by family regrouping to access to services, education, and to autonomy. Intends to grant that newcomers and family reunited people or members are in equal condition of autonomy as the rest of the city. So what we try there is to foster this equality. Nevertheless, at the beginning, we understand there's some, at the moment of arrival, some need for group support within every community. But since moment zero, we ask and we invite all the people to interact with the city, in the public space, in the services, in the libraries, etc. So we are in the program, the News Family Project, we are following the three principles in the granting equality, respecting for diversity, because sometimes we have to address in our programs and to our public in the mother tongue, and also the idea of fostering interaction. So we all together, the program is contributing to the three principles of the intercultural plan.
Okay, very good. And Tamara, I have a question for you. The success of Canada's private citizen refugee sponsorship program is in no small part due to its ability to align that refugee experience to that of every Canadian family, fathers, mothers, children, students, children of those families. But I'm really interested in how you were able to bring that university community into that family framework.
We've really encouraged the university community, so the people that were working with students, faculty, staff, to think about and relate to the families in the same way that they would treat and understand any Canadian family. Sort of basic things like respecting their privacy and don't infantilize the adults in the family, respect their decisions and agency and so on. And yes, families or refugee families have challenges unique to the refugee experience, but ultimately sort of their desired settlement outcomes are similar to anyone in Canada. So, refugee families generally want what every family wants. Parents want their kids to have good education. They want their children to be healthy and safe. So I think when you think about the needs of refugee families in that way, it can really spark ideas that have led students to come up with practical solutions to some of the resettlement challenges that refugee families are facing. So, just thinking about their own immigration experience, a lot of our student participants are immigrants themselves, or their parents are immigrants. So thinking about some of the challenges that they had in that experience here, and trying to think of solutions in that way.
That's great. And then a question for both of you. Given the age that we live in, an age of intolerance, a lot of political backlash against new ideas, against the other, all kinds of social progress, we really do need new ways to challenge anti-migrant and xenophobic narratives. So can this intercultural approach, this family approach, help us overcome some of these challenges and build a nation of good neighbors? I mean, perhaps I go back to you, Ramon, for a comment.
Yes, absolutely. The intercultural policies it's an appealing for all citizens in the city. It's not only for migrants or refugees; it's for everybody. It's something that it's appealing to everybody. Nevertheless, the principle of interaction that was mentioned before. It's a proposal. It's not mandatory. Okay, it's something that we invite people to interact on the basis that I stated before, equality and respect of diversity. So for us, you have to understand that we have been under a big crisis in Barcelona because of the economical downturn since 2008-9. The unemployment really increased from 7% to 20%. And there was a lot of tensions. Nevertheless, the perception of immigration as a threat or as a big problem, it's very low at the moment and during the crisis. And for example, we don't have, one of the important indicators is we don't have any xenophobic political parties with representation in the city, so which is really unique compared with some other countries in Europe. So I would like to think that our approach, our intercultural approach, or these programs like the New Families programs have somehow contributed to this good result.
Mm-hmm. And how about you?
Certainly, I would agree. I think through this program and through this experience, students have had an opportunity to gain a better understanding of the experience of refugees and a better understanding of different cultures and different religions and a different way to look at and understand history and politics. And I think when you start to see things in that way, that alone can really sort of shape the way that you see the world. And I think it's a really good strategy for overcoming some of those xenophobic and Islamophobic kind of ideas that are starting to emerge.
Yeah. So engaging everyday city citizens, part of that building a nation of good neighbors approach. That's great. Very well aligned to Barcelona. I think we're going to move now to questions from our audience. We've got lots of questions coming in. The first one is for you, Ramon. I have a couple of questions. I'm going to bundle them together, but Tommy C. Yates asks, he says, in Barcelona you do wonderful work to prepare families for integration, but how do you prepare Barcelona citizens for welcoming refugees? And I had another question, which I'll post in a moment, from someone who wondered, is there something special about Catalonia that has helped or hindered your work in this area? So, but to the question of how do you prepare Barcelona citizens, local residents, for welcoming?
Well, at the moment, I don't know if you have seen, but there's a big civil society is really very committed with the task of welcoming refugees. I think the the society, NGOs, and most citizens really are very proactive. A few months ago, we had a huge demonstration demanding our state, Spain, to fulfill their obligations that they committed in 2015 and that they are not really performing well. They are less than 10% of their commitment. So here there's a big one part of the society who is really pushing and demanding the state to be more open with refugees. So I think I would say it's not a big issue right now. It's on the expectations especially for Syrian refugees to come to the city are very high. In the contrary, we have other kinds of refugees coming into our city. We have a lot of refugees coming from Venezuela and from other conflicts like Honduras, or for example from Ukraine and Russian and Ukrainian war, and people perhaps are expecting people from Syria, and sometimes this creates a funny situations. Nevertheless, I would say most people are really committed, and they are open-minded and with a good attitude towards refugees.
Very good. I have a question here. A couple of technical questions are coming in tomorrow. One of the questions we have from Gina is that you mentioned that RULSC provides translation interpretation from students, and she asks whether you've ever faced issues of confidentiality or maintaining professional barriers in that context, how you deal with that.
Of course it can be difficult because I think some of the students that work with the families form close relationships with them, and they sort of even friendships that maybe have the potential to sort of cross that professional barrier. It's part of what makes the relationship successful. But of course, we give all of our students some training on sort of the integrity of interpretation. So, not providing their own opinion when they're interpreting. And so, yeah, we do try and give them some sort of training before they sort of begin their work with us.
Okay, very good. I have a question from Toronto for you, Ramon, from Aksha Mullah, who says, hello. She's working with a settlement agency here in Toronto. She wants to know, in Barcelona, do you also provide financial assistance for newcomers? And if so, for how long?
No. No, we are talking about the responsibility. When a person decides to bring the relatives, has to demonstrate that they have enough income to maintain the relatives they will come. This is a requirement by the state. So usually a migrant who starts this process should be enough, they should have enough income to maintain. So our resources are, we provide support, accompany, and we provide these workshops, these informations. We provide all these different services about legal procedures, but it is not financial support. In case that a migrant, once they arrive here, they are in a vulnerable condition, they will be addressed to the social services as a normal citizen, and they will be entitled to receive help as if it's a vulnerable condition as any other citizen.
Okay, very good. Actually, Ramon, I have one more question for you. This one comes from Matt Martin here he asks, as a settlement service provider, how can we appropriately manage expectations while presenting a realistic avenue to reunification considerations? Not every applicant is successful. You talked about this in your presentation. So
yeah, that is a very, very good question. We have to be really we have to touch people to the ground, because sometimes they say, well, I want to bring my relatives, and they don't realize that perhaps they are not fulfilling all the conditions that the law is asking for them. So before they keep on the process of reunification, we try to evaluate and to help them from the legal point of view, if this would be possible now, or maybe we suggest them to wait for a little bit and then proceed in the future. And this is something that is very difficult. Also, usually the moment of reunification is a moment of joy. All families all migrants who want to bring their relatives are really expecting to bring the relatives, because they have been separated for many years, and many 5, 10 years, etc. And they don't realize that the moment of reunification also can bring some challenges in the family, because the children, very often, they have been raised by grandparents or grandmothers, and they have somehow a sense of loss, and sometimes they feel that the mother or the father was not there, and they were left in the country of origin, and this can bring problems. Most families, they can solve these problems by themselves, but sometimes you need to make the exercise of really think on how are you going to cope with these issues.
The challenge managing expectations, and maybe you'd like to comment tomorrow. It must be tough with students who think they can change the world, but
yeah, and even with sponsors as well, yeah, they sometimes think, as you said, they can sort of solve all of the problems or all of the challenges, especially as you said, Ramon, some of the sort of family dynamics that become really complicated here. For example, when children are the ones who are learning the language more quickly and they're becoming sort of the communicators for the adults in the family, it can really alter the family dynamics. And, it's important to think about, and it's important to keep in mind when you're interacting with the families. But it is important also to remind ourselves that, we may not be able to always find the solutions to those issues. We may not be able to solve them the way that we sort of romanticize that we can.
But it's great. I have another question here from Bula Ghosh for you, Tamara. Bula would like to know whether the Lifeline program will be extended to the settlement of other refugee groups. And
yeah, that's a very good question. We were sort of talking about this before the webinar began. At the moment, the program at Ryerson does have a sunset, so we are no longer submitting refugee applications for Syrian refugees or otherwise. It is our hope that perhaps one day in the future, whether it's at Ryerson or somewhere else, that this program can serve as a model for resettlement of refugees regardless of where they come from. The university does have the WUSC program, the World University, I'm forgetting what WUSC stands for now. But that program is for refugee students who come from anywhere around the globe. It's an opportunity for refugee students to come here and study for 4 years. So that is kind of a program model that we have at Ryerson. It's a little bit different than the Lifeline program, but it does extend to all refugees.
Okay. So a question for both of you from Sheila Mastro Pietro, who asks specifically how Ryerson works with resettlement agencies. But I think today, when partnership is and community engagement is critical to the success and sustainability of our work, maybe both of you could comment a little bit about how you've worked with other agencies, other institutions, and maybe we could start with you, Ramon, how you work with other organizations in the city of Barcelona.
Yeah, we have a very good relation with the rest of the services in the city of Barcelona, the educational system, the health system. Some of these systems are provided by the regional government. So I think with the local and regional stakeholders, we have quite good relation. I think we would like to have more interaction with the state level, and with especially, for example, not so specifically in the case of the new families program of the city, but in the case of refugee settlement and the attention of refugees on the state program. We don't have any information of what refugees are coming to our city by the state administration, although we know they are coming. And this is really, I don't think it's a good way. I think we would like to work in a multi-level governance, trying to together to establish priorities and plans in the midterm. Or we don't want to challenge the competence of the state of managing refugee status, of course. This is a state competence, but we would like to discuss and to see how we can improve the attention of these refugees in our city. We have a lot to say and we have a lot to contribute, and so far there's no communication almost.
Interesting. And how about you, Tamara?
How we work with settlement agencies. So we of course refer a lot of the sponsors and families to settlement agencies who have been doing this for years. So we try not to reinvent the wheel here, and we try to sort of enhance some of the services that are provided in Toronto without sort of replacing them. So, a settlement counselor at the Arab Community Center can provide some insight that, of course, sometimes students at Ryerson cannot. So we generally do a lot of research in terms of referrals, and also, at the last year when there was a big influx of Syrian refugees sort of all at once, some of the agencies in the GTA did look to us, as I mentioned before, for interpretation support and additional volunteer support. So we've built some strong partnerships in that way, and I think that we sort of work together rather than trying to sort of replace the work that's already out there.
That's right, building new ways and bringing out social innovation, I hope, to those organizations in the process. Very interesting. I have a question now from Elise for both of you about specific activities for another group. We haven't talked as much about the needs of children below 10 years of age, and outside of, I guess, education. Ramon, how does your program target younger?
No, we make sure that when they arrive, they go to school as soon as possible. But there's no big issues with this age. They usually adapt much better than children that above this age. We of course we provide information before to the families about the school system, how it works, etc., because usually they don't know much about how the Spanish or the Catalan school system works. And sometimes what we do, for example, in the case of some women who have small children, and they are all day long taking care of the rest of the family because they have extended families, it's very difficult for them to find time on their journey for themselves to start a language course or something. They are just all day taking the little children to school, and they have maybe 1 or 2 babies who don't go to school because they are too small, etc. So what we do is we try to convince them to participate in the only time of the day that they are able to do something. That is between 10 in the morning and 12 at noon. So we provide for them, because they always have little children with them, monitors that take care for them, for the little children, so they can have 2 hours there participating in a workshop, learning some language and receiving some information from the city. And in that time we take care of these children so they can be left a little bit alone and have for themselves. It is a very, very interesting experiment that we are doing, and it's having a very good result with this special group of women.
Mm-hmm. How about you?
Yeah, sort of similar. A lot of the support that some of the larger families get does, or a lot of maybe the attention does go towards the kids often, gifts and activities, and the kids are in school and they're learning English more quickly. So as Ramon said, it's usually an easier process for the children, and maybe sometimes the parents and the family get a little bit forgotten. So we offer the services like the babysitting services, just so that parents can sometimes have a moment to really engage in the things that they want to do. So even if it's something simple like they just need an hour to sort of run errands, just to sort of have that relief and feel like they are doing something for themselves. We find that that's been really helpful. We do offer some sort of family-friendly events. So we had a family fun day, and obviously that's geared towards activities for younger children in the family, but we don't have anything sort of specifically for children aged 10 and under.
So the school system is of course a real leader in ensuring that children's needs are met. So thank you very much. I've got a question there've been a couple of questions that have come up about language, so I think we'll just address this question quickly, and then I'm going to give you one more question before we end. Mm-hmm. Alejandro Cabero is with the Migrant Education Program in Kansas City in the United States, and she has 600 students in her program that speak 67 languages and dialects from South America, Central America, Asia, East Europe, Africa, and she's trying to organize a parent leadership board to empower parents to participate in the program, the ESL program for children. And so she, I guess, would like to know how you. I'm going to ask you, Ramon, because of the diversity of your participants. How do you deal with so many different languages? How do you organize programs that can be run efficiently when you have so many different language groups in the city?
Yeah. Well, we have that's something I didn't have time to explain. We have a very good mediators and translator service. So when we know that in a meeting there's like 4 or 5 groups of different people that perhaps do not understand Spanish or Catalan, we provide these translators in the same room, and they have small groups, and the translator translates for these groups. Of course, this is you can do it with a limitation of languages. You cannot do in 10 languages at the same time because it's not operative. But you can do it with 3, at the most 4 languages. I think it is very important to have these translators and mediators. Sometimes also we have in some communities we end up doing specific groups for language. For example, is in the case of the Chinese community. We finally had to hire a person with Chinese skills capacity to get in contact with the Chinese parents and to convince them to come to our meetings, okay? And this only can be done in Chinese. So we did it, and what is important is that people come to our meetings. And if we have to do it in Chinese, we do it in Chinese, no problem. Then afterwards, you are introducing the need to learn, of course, the Catalan and the Spanish language. But at the beginning, what's important is to get these people, these families connected. I think languages are to bring people together, and we have to respect them, we have to value them, and we have to use them if it's necessary for these purposes. And of course, you have also at the same time to give the important message that all migrants should learn what is the common language of the city which are they living. So you can do both at the same time, and I think it's very important. I think if you recognize this diversity, these migrants will recognize you as a city that respects them as they are.
That's a wonderful answer. And I know that in Tamara's case, the response from the students, hundreds of Arabic speakers in the student population coming forward, it speaks very much to your point, Ramon, that if you respect diversity, your community will respond to the situations like that. I have a question from Katrin Edwards. She is a professor of immigration in Wales, in the United Kingdom. She asks Ramon to clarify how this sub-state aspect influences your work with families, if at all. So I take this to mean she's interested in how local government is addressing a policy domain often thought of as a state concern. So I guess it would be, if you can answer that question, that would be great. And for both of you, really, I would like to know how your work at local is being communicated back up to policymakers, maybe at the state and national level. Whether you're influencing and how you're communicating your work to those groups. So Ramon, perhaps can you answer that question?
If I understand, I think it goes back to the origin of the program. We, by the state law, we were obliged to issue these housing reports for all families who wanted to undertake a family regrouping process. Okay, that was like typical red tape report that you have to do for a bureaucratic process. Okay. And most of the municipalities, all municipalities in Spain had to do it. But we in the city, we observed that that was an opportunity to get in touch with a very valuable people who wanted to get family regrouping. So we said, okay, we have all the families who want to regroup and bring people. I think we think that it's an opportunity to intervene here and provide. And we started very slowly in a district, and we got in touch with the people. We experienced which were their needs, and etc. So we created slowly. But it was not induced by any regional or state administration. It was a decision by the local administration. And I think very few municipalities in Spain, they could do it, all municipalities they could do it, but very few are doing a program like this. Most municipalities, they just issue the report, they give it to the migrant, and that's it. They forget about if they bring people or not. We are taking this opportunity, but it was only because the will of the city and the political support that we received when we proposed this program.
Thank you. Wonderful answer. How about you, Tamara?
Yeah, so I think the idea of this program and of the private sponsorship program more broadly is that it's a citizen-led initiative. And so we sort of promote this principle of additionality. So that means, we're advocating to the government to say, increase the number of government-assisted refugees, because there's interest from the Canadian public to sort of take on some additional responsibility. All of our sponsors sort of talk about their social responsibility, not to replace the government's role in bringing refugees here, but to increase the opportunities for more refugees to come. So that's really sort of how we've interacted with governments and the message that we're trying to promote.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much for both of you. We really have come to the end of the Q&A. In fact, we've gone a little bit over time. I would like to end, as I always do, by asking each of you a very simple question, and perhaps we'll start with you, Tamara.
Sure.
What, if you had to give me one word, one idea, big idea, what is the secret to your success?
Oh my gosh. Probably.
One word.
Sorry, go ahead, Ramon. Well, yeah, one word. Oh my gosh, you put me on the spot. I would say probably just to be flexible, and one word, I guess, flexibility. Thinking about things in different ways, and staying open to different possibilities for what universities can accomplish and what private citizens can really accomplish.
So flexible and open,
yeah.
Sort of leading on the social innovation piece. Very
yeah.
good, absolutely. How about you, Ramon? What's
it's difficult. I would choose two, humble and persistent. Okay?
Humble and persistent.
Yes, because with this program, we have to be very persistent with helping one family and another family and another family. It doesn't seem very much, okay? But it's the impact. You don't see the impact that much. But if you are persistent and you get more people to more people, you get to most of the families in the city during many years. I think at the end, this persistency on getting to people, at the end, it really has an impact. And I always tell to my teams, to the teams of the city, that they have to be persistent on their work and to be very humble and always, work and get one person and another person and another person. At the end, it's like small drops of water. At the end, we will get all soaked.
Very good, excellent answer. We call this my wonderful Ratna Ahmedvar, who founded Cities Migration, she calls this relentless incrementalism.
Oh, I like it.
Very good, yeah. But open, flexible, and persistent on the small things and the big things. What a wonderful way to end our session. Thank you very much. Our time has run out. On behalf of all of our participants, the Cities of Migration team here at the Global Diversity Exchange, I'd like to thank Ramon Senora from Barcelona and Tamara Sabarini from Toronto for a really brilliant exchange of ideas. To our audiences in Cities of Migration everywhere, please imagine this excellent work being interpreted in your city, adapted by your organization, or changing the neighborhood that you live in. We'd like to hear your stories and share more good practices like these, so please stay connected.